Folks, if you belong to the Victoria 3 gang, then I got good news for you, because today we got a new dev diary for quality of life improvements in 1.6. This right here is dev diary number 104, and I think it is a pretty good one. The most important part for me personally though is, since I have a couple of caveats, after you watch the video, please go into the comments and tell me what kind of UX is irking you that hasn't been mentioned here at all, because I have at least 2 notes that are, of course, how else could it be, related to the military, maybe even 3 notes. Anyway, let's go over what we are getting, because of course this will already make our lives a lot easier playing the game, but hey, it can always be better. So, the improvements for this update, so 1.6, which is an update that we know is coming in the first quarter. I think that is how much we know. Other than that, we don't really know anything. 1.6, just for the record, will be a completely free update, meaning there is no DLC attached. This means that Spheres of Influence, I'm not sure when it's coming. I have only seen it confirmed that it's not coming on the Steam release date, that is the 29th of March. That one is most certainly not correct. I personally would guess something between like April or May. That is roughly the release window that is normally targeted by Paradox games these days, so maybe there, but this update right here will come earlier, although also we have no idea when. The improvements for this update are mainly focused on 3 areas: Diplomacy, the Outliner, and the Census data panel, with some additional bug fixes and improvements sprinkled on top. Let's talk about Diplomacy. The Start Diplomatic Play pop-up has gotten an overhaul that should make it much easier to get an idea of how likely any country is to side for or against you. The Relative Preference for Country tooltip has also been polished up. It now gives you more information on the first level of the tooltip, which in turn should make it clearer which factors go into the AI's decision-making process. This is a really good change. I believe this was during the open beta, so towards the end of the last year. They talked about this in Discord very briefly. They basically said, yeah, we want to make it much clearer where people are leaning, why they're leaning there, and what is happening. And that is literally what is now coming. The one thing that I will say about this window is that if you have an incredibly active zone, so, you know, for example, if you are in the central area of Europe and you have all these minor German states involved in that area, this would be unbelievably long, right? That is my main concern here. I hope that they account for it to some degree, but let's go over what is better right here. Normally you would get this, and then you would just get a list of people that are somewhere undecided. Here we have our side, enemy side, we get the battalion numbers, the flotillas, and so on. Long term, of course, I would love it if it actually kind of also takes into account where these battalions are, so are they really in this region or not. Then we have undecided, and this is so good. Take a look at this right here. Indeed, we do now see who they are in favor of and why. Austria and Prussia, for example, are very much in favor of Russia, not in favor of the Ottomans, but you can also see that others are in favor of basically neither. All of these are vassals of the Ottomans, so obviously they hate them, but they don't like Russia enough to side with them either. This is an unbelievably good window. You're going to see even more of this as we go down, but the biggest complaint that I see from players is that they do not understand the way the AI behaves in any diplomatic arrangement. And I will grant you that there are some instances, such as, for example, alliances just randomly breaking, which we will also see down there. You will be very happy, I think. But primarily, outside of those examples, we're looking at a situation where it's very obvious what they're going to do if you've modded the game as much as I have, because hey, they really do make a lot of really reasonable decisions. However, this was not at all exposed until now. So I think this will be very helpful for people to not feel super exposed. Oh, you know, I am CM and I just declared a war against Vietnam, and all of a sudden France comes in. You would be able to roughly tell here already. The tooltip for a country has gotten completely reworked to include better contextual information, more data, and clearer information hierarchy. Let's take a look at this. We can see their relationship to us, subject and personal union, and that they are a neighbor, so they border us. Then, rank, minor power, overlord, GDP, population, standard of living, nothing too special, I would say. I think none of this is too interesting. Where it really does get good is this right here. AI strategies are front and center of this game, but they aren't really exposed. If you jump into a game right now, I don't even need to show this on the screen, we all know what it looks like. To see them, you actually need to scroll down when you are in the window of a different country. But accessing them is so goddamn important, because understanding what the AI strategy of a country is will also make it much more logical how they behave in diplomacy. So exposing this, definitely also a good change. The country detail panel has gotten a slight tweak to the layout, which makes it possible to see both the country's attitude towards you and their current strategies at a glance. Since these factors are important in the AI's decision-making process, having them more easily accessible should help make a country's behavior more comprehensible. This is so nice. There's a couple of things, okay, and I've complained about these endlessly, and I don't think I will ever stop complaining about them until this patch hits. There's a couple of things where I'm just like, how the hell is this the way in the game? Currently, you get these symbols here really big, and you need to scroll to actually see them. So you got your attitude, your relations, and infamy, right? And then you need to scroll down to see the AI strategy behavior. I love that we can now see all of this without scrolling, without doing anything. Taking away scroll bars from these windows is so goddamn good. I would even like to see it, quite frankly, if the domestic situation, if you just make the laws smaller, you know, the actual buttons right there that you can click to, for example, change one of your underlings' laws, make them smaller so that you never have to scroll. This should always be just on, you know, basically at a first glance. We can also now see here the actual ranking. Honestly, I don't care that much for the particular ranking, maybe for the army stuff, but in general, standard of living, you know, like I'm looking at this number, not at all at this. So yeah, hey, it's nice, it doesn't hurt anybody. The diplomacy map mode has gotten a new map marker that shows any ongoing pact you have with that country, their attitude towards you, and relations, plus any eventual rate of change. Huge fan. This is beautiful, it's gorgeous, I love it, it's my best friend, and it probably one day will get my inheritance. You can see it right here, this is Norway, we have a personal union, they are a loyal subject, and we have a plus 30 relationship. Thank God. This is very, very nice. It will make it much easier to read at a first glance what is going on. Now, I will say this as well, I would like it. Currently, you will see what the attitude of other countries are for whatever country you select. So right now we got Sweden selected, and we're seeing the attitudes of the countries around it. I would really like it if I could select Sweden and show the attitude Sweden has towards everybody else. That is basically a reverse map mode. We have something very similar already in the game, but it shows the opposite of what I would also like to see. That is one of my tiny nitpicks. I would like to see, again, the reverse map mode there. What they've done with this map mode in general is really, really nice. Diplomatic pacts have been reworked to more clearly state what could cause them to break. This change is also reflected in the pact has broken notifications, making them easier to understand. Thank God. I've given up on long-term diplomacy because they just end. Pacts just end, okay? This will very self-evidently no longer be the case. Now, I will tell you this right now, once 1.6 drops, if this is the standard showcase of this, right, that it's in your current situation rider, please change the notification option. I know right away that when this actually comes out, right, so when 1.6 is out, I'm gonna right-click this, change this into an immediate pop-up, one of those crisis pop-ups here at the very top, because this is so goddamn important. When a diplomatic pact breaks right now, you will virtually never know why. This is a huge change, and it's so goddamn important because diplomacy, like I already said earlier with the prediction for the diplomatic plays, in Victoria 3 is a lot less random than you might think, but it never tells you about that unless you start modding the game. Alright, but listen. Some things in the world are more important than, well, basically anything. And this is one of them. They have finally, oh my god, reworked the outliner. The outliner now has tabs, pinned, economy, politics, diplomacy, military, all. Most outliner items also had a design pass, and most of them now show some additional information. We've also added a new outliner item for countries, showing their rank, attitude towards you, and relations. In addition to these changes, you are now able to unpin political movements, diplomatic plays, etc., giving you more control over what is shown in the outliner. We have also added an option to move the notification feed to the left of the outliner, similar to what Nuggets mod Notifications Not Over Outliner does. I am happy. I am content with the world, okay? This is an unbelievable change. It took it way too long. Listen, I'm gonna be honest with you. It took so long. The outliner window, I know I set this actually after PDXCon, after I played the game at PDXCon, I did this really long video where I talked about my experience with Victoria 3, and I said then that the outliner menu, as it is in the left, you know, it's just cramped in there, and it adjusts depending on what lens you are in, but it never does that because you never see that actual outliner menu. I said that that is kind of sucky because it's so clear that this is a menu that was kind of neglected, right? They designed it and then it never really made it in full. Look at that. All of a sudden, you can properly sort things, you have proper categories, it's very easy, it's actually relevant whether you're pinning, whether you're not pinning. I am looking forward to this. I really do hope that we can also actually pin other markets, not just our own market. But man, I gotta tell you, this makes me happy. Now on top of that, notifications are also color-coded to give you more information at a glance. This is green, I guess, because it's something that you are doing. This is a negative, oh, actually, it seems more like a positive and negative events, right? Maybe there's like blue for somebody else is doing something to somebody else, who the hell knows? These aren't color-coded at all. Hey, it is what it is. The other important thing for me is, and I'm not sure whether this is the case since they are actually like moving them over, right? They're moving the notifications over right there. If I leave my notifications on the outliner, the only wish that I have is that the outliner doesn't constantly reset itself. If you have ever seen this, you scroll down, you want to get to your generals, and then a notification pops up and you are on the top of the outliner again. If that isn't the case, if it still resets the outliner, I can't see anybody playing without, changing the notifications to the left. But hey, either way, the issue here very clearly has been addressed and basically been fixed. So let's move on to something that was missing, that was in Victoria 2 and Victoria 1, of course, and it's coming back better than ever. The Census Data Panel, formerly known as the POP Browser. In the previous Dev Diary, we introduced the POP Browser. We didn't go through this, don't worry about it too much, you're not missing anything because it's all in this Dev Diary yet again and better. This has been renamed to the Census Data Panel, based on a suggestion by forum user Buladelu. Since then, we have also added literacy, job satisfaction, and needs as columns in a second page in the spreadsheets. The common suggestion of visualization of interest group memberships sadly had to be postponed to a later date due to implementation difficulties and performance concerns. You can, of course, still see which POPs are part of an interest group through the Population tab, and on the relevant interest group details panel like before. For upcoming updates, we're looking at the feasibility of implementing similar screens for other central types of data: buildings, states, countries, and goods, currently being in the very earliest stage of planning. Let's take a look at this. It's beautiful, okay? If you're wondering, yes, you can do this also as an actual, just a round diagram, a circle diagram, because there's just a button right here that hasn't been clicked and isn't shown unless you click it. What are we seeing right here? We can filter stuff by profession, by states, incorporation, loyalty, culture, religion, discrimination, employment, job satisfaction, and standard of living, and so on. Then right here we get the stats of whatever POP we are filtering for, with the POP profession, culture, religion, state, workplace, and so on listed. And then right here, I assume we can just click to the right and we will see the remaining, categories basically that are currently not directly in here. This is beautiful. I effectively have no complaints. I would like this to see as expanded as possible because more data is more data is more data. I said this ages ago. I think only on Twitter I actually said this. I don't think I said this in a YouTube video. But basically I was saying that I would love it if I just got like an empty space somewhere in the game that I can open with like one button press, and then I can pin graphs. I would love to pin graphs of, for example, the cultures of particular states, or for example, the radicalization changes, the standard of living changes in particular states. I would like to do that, and they only really, reset or they refresh when I open that to hopefully save any performance. This is a step into this direction. With the filters, I can set it up in a way where I see exactly what I want to see. I hope you can select multiple states rather than just one. But yeah, this is the kind of data hub that if you are really deep into this game, if you understand all of the niches and everything that is happening, that you need, quite frankly, because then you can track the minute details of how your nation is changing, and that's the essence of Victoria. Showing columns for radicals, loyalists, standards of living, right here, take a look at this. So this is, if you press the button, you see the different needs, job satisfaction, literacy, and so on. Indeed, there's a lot that you can do, and I'm a huge fan. Now, let's talk about miscellaneous improvements. One of the small ones we can see right here enacted in front of us. If you move away from a market by, for example, clicking on a good, it doesn't reset the location of where the market was. This is why I'm hoping the outliner also doesn't reset, even though maybe notifications are popping up, because this was a huge issue as well. I mean, in general, I guess, this game has a lot of lists that reset whenever you leave their menu. Here, this has been fixed. Other than that, input goods shortage map markers are also now collected per state on mid-zoom level, similar to construction, reducing the overall map clutter. Somebody asked the developers here, can you do that with armies as well? And I really wish the answer had been we already did that, but they instead said, we would like to look into that, but not for 1.6. If you've ever had any war, then you will know that there will be a huge spam. It's the space program of Victoria 3, of armies being in the same position, at the same front line, and so on. That stuff really needs to be summarized, much like it is summarized here. That is going to come eventually, but yeah, that is one of my points. I'm like, that missing sucks, because it would make it so much more enjoyable to actually interact with the warfare system. Then right here we have an upgrade all button that has been added both for upgrading all formations in your country and for upgrading all units within a particular unit group in a formation. That is cool. So we have the differentiation of doing that as a particular, just the entire country or just a particular formation. We can see it right here. Upgrade all infantry, upgrade all artillery, upgrade all cavalry. I believe this is just for this formation, but I assume that you can do it again in the military screen to do it for all of your formations in general. The employment indicator has gotten a reworked tooltip that more clearly explains why a building is able to hire or not. I am going to be honest with you here, okay? Having read every comment on the Victoria Tweaks mod Steam page, most of the comments, and I don't respond to many of them, but most of the comments kind of just don't understand the game, and these kind of tooltips, as they are in the current version, are partially to blame for this. Many people complain about, buildings not hiring, or about, for example, there's a stat that I really hate in this game because it's just wrong. The very poor strata will say they have a plus 50% income surplus, which is true, but their income is $2, right? It's like, that's not enough to level up to the next strata and be at a much more reasonable, maybe a plus 10% or whatever. People misread all of those things. This right here is really important to make people realize that they just didn't understand something until now and that it wasn't the game being buggy. This building will not hire because it predicts that doing so would reduce its productivity below what it considers the minimum viable threshold of $3. Now it says this much more closely, much more clearer, and people can understand it. Big fan. The way we display qualifications has also received some significant changes. Previously, we would display all qualifications for a particular profession in the state panel, regardless of whether the pops that held these qualifications actually had any real chance of becoming that profession. For example, your capitalists might very well have tons of machinist qualifications, but it's not very likely that they're going to quit their jobs and make the switch from factory owner to factory worker. Yeah, right. Adding to this confusion, the insufficient qualifications warning when constructing a building or changing a PM would only look at qualifications among peasants and the unemployed, meaning its predictions would often not play out the way in practice. This, again, like I said earlier, people complain about this so much. They see, for example, the job seeker stat now. The job seeker stat is one of the worst things in my mind because any new building that you build isn't guaranteed to have access to that full pool. Sometimes that full pool already is fully employed in, an actual building, which means if you build a new building, it will take from those buildings and all of a sudden you will no longer have full employment in all your buildings. People don't really understand that. That stuff being cleared up is super important to me because I see it so often as a complaint, as like, oh, this is broken, this is buggy. It never actually is. Alright, and then in 1.6 we now always show something we call employable qualifications, which is qualifications held by pops that are reasonably able to take job defined by meeting the following criteria. Isn't already the relevant pop type, is unemployed or a job seeker, very cautious about this, is not enslaved, isn't working in a government building or subsidized building, if employed, wouldn't consider the change in pop type to be a downgrade, for example, aristocrat qualifications for farmers aren't likely to be considered, and so on. What this means is that when you get a warning for a building that's to be constructed not having enough qualifications to fill, that warning can actually be trusted, and you'll have a much easier time determining which professions are a bottleneck for your industrialization effort. Big fan. Look at that. All of a sudden, it is a lot clearer. The tooltip for changing production methods now has a much more accurate prediction as it now takes more factors into account than before. Oh my god. This tooltip is so annoying because I can change production methods with a gut feeling and I will be right and they will perform well. New players will not understand this. This being fixed is massive. If we can finally rely on this again, it will be absolutely big. Yeah, this is exactly what was needed to make this playable even from a more casual or a newer point of view. The construction interaction now has two modes for the list items, condensed, which is what is currently in game in 1.5, and the new full mode, which has additional information like state traits, employment, production methods, and local prices for input and output goods. Right, this I'm not sure about. It's just so big. Like, one state takes so much room, I'm not sure how often I'm gonna use this. Maybe I'm too negative about this. Like, it's very difficult, I think, to evaluate how much I would value this particular thing. I personally virtually always go by earnings, I think. I think it's not productivity that I go by, I think it's by earnings. And then obviously I build first and incorporated stuff most of the time. Depends on, of course, what we're building, but yeah. So I'm not sure whether I actually need this information to make this decision, but maybe I need it, I just haven't realized yet that I do. Anyway, the transfer units panel. a huge pain and everybody's behind because you need to like do all that stuff manually, has gotten some extra functionality compared to what is currently available in 1.5 based on many requests from our players. First and foremost, you can now with one quick button press move all or half of the units and commanders over to the other side. You may of course want to be more detailed when setting up your transfers, something we now provide additional tools for, namely text input box, slider plus arrow buttons, and a list of all individual units. I like this, okay? So here you can see the all or half, here you can see the where you can write, I guess, here you can see the slider and so on. The one thing that I'm not seeing here, and that that is the thing that I need most out of this, is that even without changing anything in the slider, I can transfer all of one unit type, right? So this, I assume, or half of this, I assume, is like literally splits each unit into half and sends them over. I would like it that I can like just click here. It's grayed out, so I assume it doesn't work that way, without needing to move that slider if I want to transfer all skirmish infantry and nothing else. This, if nothing is selected, if this is 0, I wish meant shoot everything over, right? That is my personal complaint. That is one of my nitpicks here. I wish this was done slightly different. In general, I think this is now good, but it does remind me of the fact that in Victoria 3, stuff like switching stuff between armies, making new armies, or selecting multiple armies to merge them, for example, takes more clicks in general. I was thinking about this because I was like, Hearts of Iron 4, you know, I haven't played it in a while, I think since that Mother, like the supply patch came out. The supply patch was so good, just for the record, but I haven't played it in a while, and I booted it up and I took a look at the units and was like, why is it so easy? Why does it feel so easy to do things? And you know, then it hit me. Victoria 3 doesn't use the drag box selection. So in any other game, if I have multiple armies on the map, I drag a box around them, they are both selected, I can give both commands, and then I can merge them if they're on the same tile, I can split, whatever, right? Victoria 3 doesn't do this. Whenever I want to interact with any given formation, if I want to unify a formation, for example, I need to go into one particular formation, open this window, select another formation here that I need to know the name of, and then I can merge them. That is something that this window will never be able to fix. Having the ability to just drag a box about your units and telling them, all of you now go to this front line, all of you now go to this HQ, all of you merge now, is so much easier. It's never going to be possible via this window. So I think the changes to this window are good, but the fact that in any other game I have 2 clicks, drag, and then merge button, and in this game I need to click the army, click the transfer window, click the household division, I need to select the household division, then I click all, then I click confirm. It's so many more clicks, right? This window is better than what we have right now, but it's not going to be good enough in comparison to any other game when it comes to just how ease of use, right? That's one of those things that really, I can't let it go. It's like, it's kind of painful, right? Because like, it's so obvious, the drag thing, once you think about it, but we just don't have it here. This right here shows transfer units. I like that we can now select it all individually. Obviously, this is important. I really love the idea of sorting it by state. You can select individual states, as you can see right there. And then you can make sure that only people from these states actually head on over. Big fan. I have no complaint when it comes to this. I think this is a great change. Mostly because this game is so particular about where it sources its army from. It's very important that you source them from the right location. Yeah, I like it. This way in particular, of course, I always like to run with a home setup and a colonial setup, with the colonial setup, of course, initially coming from my home nation, but later on being substituted by locals. I think it's a really cool thing. Yeah, the window definitely got a lot better, but I think my complaint still stands. Anyway, let's go to the last issues right here. During one of our personal development time days, we finally made a working prototype for what has internally been referred to as the holy grail of Tooltips UX, tables in Tooltips. This implementation is only used in 2 places as of 1.6, but we will most likely start using these more often in the future, as they make it much easier to present certain types of information with greater clarity. Yeah, I like this. This is cool. We look at the party, we see all of this information as a flexible table, right? It can just adjust itself with the interest group, the cloud, and the approval. Right here, taxation revenue, we see it broken down in Götaland, where that comes from. It's so easy, it makes it a lot easier for us. Huge fan. So you see, there are a lot of improvements coming in 1.6 for the UX. I personally, especially when it comes to the military, have my issues. I also do wish that when you go into the population thing and it shows your lower strata as plus 50% bonus, but it means literally nothing, that we kind of revisit this. But that is not necessarily a UX issue as much as it is an issue where we need to analyze is this information valuable and does it actually do something? Like, obviously it's UX, but this is a lived UX thing rather than a UX thing that we can design or that can be designed. This right here is beautifully designed, nothing wrong with that. I just hope that this military stuff that, you know, the sometimes misleading or misunderstood data that is provided to players is going to get addressed eventually. Again, if you have any thoughts, if you are more critical, if you're more positive, if you have any input where you're like, oh my god, this UX thing irks me so much, then definitely check it out. Next week, in 2 weeks, Alex will discuss the upcoming changes to the migration mechanics and their impact on game performance. This was meant to make it into the game in the open beta, and they wisely, I think, scrapped it to, you know, take another factor that was just very aggressively against getting a decent version out there, out of the game. They seem to be re-getting that in 1.6. I'm very happy to see that. I think the little sniff of it that we got in 1.5 open beta really made it seem worthwhile. More details, of course, follow in 2 weeks, so let's not get too deep into that, but I'm looking forward to it. And that's it for the time being. I'll leave you right here, and I will see you later, alligator.